Hey guys, it's Dash Zach back with, no, we're skipping it. We're skipping the intro. We have 5 mice to compare to the GPX today. I've got a GPX 2 right here. Which one of these are better? Some of them are we'll spend less time. Some of them are pretty good, we'll spend some more time. Let's get into it. Just a little prep. This is our control. This is the GPX 2 in magenta. Love that colorway. Skate-wise, I've got Ghost Glide's Edge Runners on, but I do have experience with stock skates, and this is a batch one, so the clicks are heavy, very heavy. They loosened up over time. I've also tested some GPX 2s with the lighter clicks, so I can speak to that as well. Do you know some of my thoughts on the Superlight overall? I do enjoy the shape, as generic as it is. Everybody really doesn't like these mushy side buttons. And when you're looking at these clones in this video, do keep in mind that if you can find a used GPX 1 for maybe $50 to $60, that's a great deal. And you can't really go wrong with that mouse, especially if it's not been too heavily used, or a used GPX 2 under $100. You're looking at pretty solid value there. So competitor number 1 is the Ajaz AJ139. I have the Pro 1K edition. Quick note, if you see anything glossy on the side, that's a custom grip my friend applied. Beyond that, it's an Ajaz mouse, so the build quality is If you press down on the middle, top of the click, you can see it kind of makes this move upward here. If you click down here, you can get some grinding, and there's a lot of play on both of these switches. The clicks themselves are the Huano Blue Shell transparent pink dots, and they're actually quite tactile and quite snappy. So in game, on a very basic click, I didn't notice any issues, and I did actually enjoy those. Scroll wheel, super light, super spammable. No extra complaints there at all either. It's a pretty solid scroll wheel. Side flex, none really. If you press it on the bottom, you can hear a popping sound there. And the clicks actually kind of cheap. Skates are standard black slow PTFE, kind of like China clone mouse skates. There's dongle storage on the bottom. I do like that. Beside that, the side buttons are absolute trash. They're cheap, pingy feeling. You can sink this in and feel a second click and almost lose the button inside the shell. There's a lot of play. There's no pre-travel, which is nice, but crazy post-travel. So the side button's probably the worst aspect of this mouse. Overall in game, I performed all right with this. It's the lowest quality, I would say, of all these clones. The main shape difference here is, if you can see here, it's the same length, but it is 2 millimeters shorter across the entire mouse. And boy, can you tell that. It just doesn't provide quite as much palm support, and I didn't feel quite as locked in as I do on the GPX because it fills my hand out more. I did get used to this. I did perform fine, but it would not be a mouse that I would really recommend going for. It does come in a little bit lighter than GPX at 54 grams on my scale, and there are comfort grooves here. I'm one of them too that are a good differentiator from the GPX, so you may like that. This mouse is cheap, so I guess it's not recommending it is a strong word, but it's definitely just not my favorite. Next up, we have the MCHOS A5. I have the Pro Max edition. Quick rundown of those. There's a Pro and a Pro Max and an Ultra. I would go with the Pro if you can find it because it's only $35. The Pro Max cost me $45 on Amazon, but they're all a pretty good deal to be honest, and this mouse is pretty solid. It has Huano Blue Shell pink dots as well, but they're implemented even better than they were in the Ajaz mouse. They're very spammable, they rebound very well. There's not a lot of play here on the front. There's a bit. You can get some grounding if you play it out, but I'm not sure why you would. It doesn't ever get too heavy throughout the entire click. It's a little lighter at the bottom, but it's still medium at most. Actuation here in the center. The scroll wheel is medium in its steps and medium in its click. The side buttons for this mouse on a budget are actually pretty solid. They're pretty tactile. They don't make any loud pingy noises. They don't sink in very much either, and there's not a lot of pre-travel, so the side buttons I do enjoy. Skates are the standard black PTFE skates. They're slow, but they're not quite like the other MCHOS and Ajaz skates. These, if you can tell here, are a little more rounded on the edges, and I do actually really enjoy that. It makes them feel a little bit more premium in game. They're not the nicest skates, but they're solid and better than the other MCHOS mice. This is close to bare plastic on most of the mouse coating wise. It almost feels like there's more coating on the buttons, which is odd, and they feel sort of nice, but the rest of the mouse is pretty plain, so I don't love that. There's no side creaking, there's no bottom flex, there's no rattling. It does come in at 59 grams, but it also is built like a tank, and that's only a few grams more than a GPX. Looking at the shape differences here, it is pretty close to 1-to-1, but it's like shrunken down in a 1-to-1 way. It's 3 millimeters shorter in length, 2 millimeters shorter in height, and 2 millimeters narrower here. So it just does feel like a smaller GPX, and I really like that. It's scaled down in a very nice way. This felt better in hand than the AJ139, and then it was just a smaller GPX, but it still provided nice hump support because the rest of the mouse scaled down with it. So when it comes to the MCHOS A5, if you want a slightly smaller GPX, this has the go for me. Some mouse you may have not seen coming is actually the Attack Shark X3. This is one I got from a friend, and he had glossified it up. It's got a lot of grip. The standard one comes with just super bare plastic, no coating, so I don't love that about the mouse. The side buttons, there's not a lot of pre-travel. Not a lot of post-travel, and they're very snappy. They don't feel that cheap, so it's pretty solid. The main clicks are black Mambas. They're kind of hollow, kind of cheap feeling, which is a theme of the mouse. There's actually not a lot of play, which is pretty impressive. They get pretty heavy at the top. The scroll wheel has medium steps and medium light actuation and rebounds very, very quickly. There's a little side flex, a little bottom flex, but nothing you would ever notice in game. The stock skates are absolute crap. Some of my least favorite stock skates. So I have some dot skates on here, so that is one of the main detractors of the mouse. The thing about this mouse though is it has a $33.95. I got it for $30 on Amazon. It may be a little more, but if you can get this for $30, it's quite the deal. It's like a scaled down GPX in my mind that just has this side tapering you can see here. So like it's not flat on the sides as much like the GPX, but there is some tapering, and that just locks me in. And for some reason, I perform stupidly well with this in game and in aim trainers. It's actually, if we do a side by side here, 6 millimeters shorter than the GPX, 3 millimeters narrower, and then it actually reaches the same hump height, but it does drop off more here, whereas you can see the GPX stays a little bit taller throughout. Yeah, if you can get this mouse for $30, longevity aside, I really, really enjoy it. So coming back down to earth, we have a mouse you probably expected to see, that being the Inca G23, a mouse that I heard about for a long time but never tried. Cool feature we'll talk about later. Hot swappable switches. But is this a solid GPX clone? I would say yes, and here's why. It has Hono Blue Shell transparent pink dots as the default switches. They're very tactile, very spammable. Clicking in the middle, you don't come anywhere near to contacting the shell, and you really have to force it here to get any contact at the bottom. Looking at the front, there's barely any play, and there's no mechanism necessarily stopping that in the middle here, so really, really good build quality there. Scroll wheel has steps, but they're lighter on the scroll, and the click is medium to light, very, very spammable. Side buttons are a little bit bigger and easy to access, rebound nicely, not a lot of pre-travel, don't sink in a lot, they kind of stop there, something you don't usually see on a budget-minded mouse. Looking at the bottom here, again, you have the spots where you can hot swap the switches out, but you also have these apparently heat-treated skates, and these skates are nice for a budget mouse. I really, really like these. They're rounded, they're thicker, they're very smooth, they have a very nice glide, they're not quite as slow as other stock skates, and just a great feature of the mouse. One more thing to note here is there are slightly stronger comfort grooves than on the GPX, and they're a little bit longer and more defined up to the middle to top of the switch here compared to the GPX. The coating is also darn good. I would say better than, if not equal to, like an ATK mouse, almost pushing like Skyrox. It's not quite as grippy as the Skyrox V6, but like it locks you in. There's definitely a coating. It's the best we've seen in any of these mice yet. Man, those clicks are just really nice and tactile. I really enjoy them. So like, have I complained about this mouse yet? I don't think so. Let's go there. It does weigh 65 grams. And that is the main thing, is this felt kind of like a tank compared to some other mice in this category that were 10 plus grams lighter. So that would be the main detractor of the mouse. But beside that, like, again, I don't think you really heard me complain. Real quick, I want to hit the switches that come with it too. By default, let me pop this up here. We have the blue shell transparent pink dots. You also get Hono green shell white dots. They're slightly more tactile and clicky, same actuation force as the defaults. There's Hono black shell blue dots. They're the heaviest and most tactile of the switches. And there's also Hono silent brown shell white dots. They have a unique thaki sound. They're not really great for gaming in my experience. I did try all these very, very briefly. I came back to the Hono transparent blue shell pink dots. I'm used to them. They perform really nicely in the mouse. And this mouse is also essentially an exact one-to-one shape clone of the GPX. Same length, same width, same height. I didn't really detect any differences in my testing. It felt like I was holding a GPX when I used it. Again, just the weight is like the thing that I didn't love at 65 grams. But beside that, for the price you're getting this at, this is a top recommendation for a GPX clone for me. This was the non-pro version. I got it on Amazon for $45. The pro version, which has up to 8K, is going to run you around $60 to $65. One more thing I did forget to mention is the sensor is like stupidly far back on this compared to the GPX, which again is something I prefer if you've watched my videos before, but this is something you should be aware of. And while we're on the topic, one more thing I forgot to mention about the Attack Shark X3 sensor, also pretty far back. Again, might be why it feels so good to me in game, something that you should be aware of. Last, but definitely not least, we have the Mcho's A7. This is the A7 Pro. Quick version rundown. I would avoid the A7 because it has Omron mechanicals. This has the opticals. If you go from the Pro to the Ultra, you get a 3950 sensor. This 3395 performed very well for me. And then you're going to be 59 grams with a 500 milliamp hour battery on both the Pro and the Ultra. So getting into the actual implementation of the mouse, Mcho's has been blowing me out of the water lately with their quality, and this mouse is no exception. Click-wise, it has the Omron opticals. They're very, very spammable. Probably medium to light actuation at the top, and they are super light at the bottom, so something to note. If you click on the middle, you're not touching the shell at all. You can contact the shell here at the bottom, but even that is really challenging. And the way they have this middle piece here prevents a lot of side-to-side play, so super pass for me on the clicks. Scroll wheel is notchy with medium steps, and the click actuation is medium to light, super reboundable, super spammable. The side buttons are a little cheap feeling, like the bare plastic there, but there's really no pre-travel, and they rebound very well. You can sink them into the shell a little bit more than on the Inca G23. Just something to note there. The coating on this mouse is on par with the M-Shows L7 and the M-Shows M7 that came out. It's close to, maybe a little bit lesser than the ATK mice, but very satisfactory for me and locks me in nicely. If you take a look here at the bottom, the skates are the exact same as you saw on the M-Shows L7. They're really slow stock PTFE skates. They're rounded. I like the ones in the A5 better for some reason. Not really sure why. These are super slow, probably 1.5 to a slow 2 out of 5 on the scale. They're not my favorite. They perform fine, but again, they're just a little bit too slow for me. Looking at the side-by-side here, I didn't really detect any changes in the shape from the GPX2 to the M-Shows A7. It's basically a 1-to-1 clone, and that is what I enjoy about it. It just feels really nice in hand. Part of that comes down to the coating. Part of that comes down to this is the only mouse in this lineup that has the Omron opticals, and they are indeed my favorite switch. And there's really no major detractor from this mouse. Much like the G23, beside the skates on this and maybe the texturing on the buttons, I don't really have any complaints, and I really enjoyed my time on this mouse. Build integrity wise, you're not going to get any flexing here on the front with the shell design. It doesn't move at all. There is some play here on the side. I'm not sure how well you can see that. Yeah, you can see that moving there. There is some side flex if you really apply a lot of pressure. That's been standard on these M-Shows mice. I don't mind it because it doesn't occur in game, but I want you to know that it's there. And then you can also get some flexing here. You can see by the sensor if you push down at the bottom, but again, nothing that I noticed in game. So overall, the build quality is probably about an 8 of 10. It would be a 10 out of 10 if there was no movement there, but again, barely any play on the clicks, and the rest of the mouse is almost flawless in my opinion. I almost forgot to mention the weight balancing on this thing is really, really good. It does come in at 59 grams, but after using it for a bit, you almost forget that weight's a little bit higher than the GPX2 because it's so well balanced, and it just feels very light and very responsive in hand. So another shout out to M-Shows on that weight balancing. Quick note is we got the full lineup here with the X3 hiding in the back. Imposter. There wasn't much to write home about. A lot of the software was mediocre to crappy, just desktop software. To be fair to Inca, they did have a WebDriver. It was all in Chinese, but I do love a WebDriver, so I guess they win the software battle there as far as that goes. But yeah, again, across the board, mediocre, meh, nothing to write home about. So we're gonna rapid fire some weights here. AJ139 Pro, slight coating added to the edge. We've got 53.4 grams advertised at 50 grams, so 3 grams above. M-Shows A5 Pro Max, completely stock, advertised at 59 grams, coming in at 60.4 grams. Attack Shark X3, coating modified with dot skates, advertised at 49 grams. This comes in at 52 grams, which 3 grams above. Inca G-Hero, totally stock, advertised at 65 grams, coming in at 65.2 grams. Good stuff. Lastly, the M-Shows A7 Pro, advertised at 55 grams, coming in at 58 grams there. Unsurprisingly, these plus or minus 3s almost always just mean plus 3. As far as my overall experience with these mice, did I perform better with any of these or worse than any of these with the GPX2? I did a lot of head-to-head testing either in-game and in aim trainers, and the answer is no. I performed pretty much the same across all mice, which I do tend to find is the case just in general with gaming mice, unless there's a significant shape difference. And I mean, shocker, these are all clones or very similar to the GPX, so I performed very similarly. Things that did stick out to me that I just want to mention again, the lower height on this AJ139 without shortening the mouse was a little weird to me. I liked how this was completely shrunken down. The A5, the Inca G23's heavier weight did kind of bug me a little bit, beside the fact that the rest of the mouse was premium. And yeah, I got no complaints about this little A7 over here. What a guy. Again, this X3 was kind of a wild card. Take it as you will. It's cheap. It performs really well for how cheap it is. If you're paying more than $40, definitely don't recommend it. If you get it for $30 or less, give it a try maybe. So that definitely wraps up for my thoughts on the GPX clones, and thank God, because this video took longer to test for and longer to record than any other review that I've made thus far. But I do think it was worth it because I couldn't find a video like this myself when I searched for it. So what's the verdict? I would skip the Ajaz AJ139. It's just kind of a cheap mouse that I don't love. The A5 from M-Shows is a solid scaled down GPX, and I can recommend that. My top 2 actual GPX 1-to-1 clones were the Inca G23 and the M-Shows A7. The G23 was pretty flawless overall, but I didn't like the heavier weight, and something just didn't feel great to me when I was using it. If you want to tinker though, the easily hot softball switches are awesome. But that makes my clear winner the M-Shows A7, and really it's not that close. The coating was the best to me, and I really like the Omron opticals. The weight balancing was also pretty darn good. M-Shows has been knocking it out of the park lately with their mice, and they've been putting out banger after banger with the M7, L7, and now the A7. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Throw me a follow on Twitter at Dasterzak, and check out the Mousecast podcast as well on Fridays with my friend Phalanges. And with that, we'll see ya.